If it hadn't been the Lord, who was on our side, now may Israel say. If I hadn't been the Lord, who was on our side, when men rose up against us, then they had swallowed us up quick, when their wrath was kindled against us. Then the waters had overwhelmed us, the stream had gone over our soul. Then the proud waters had gone over our soul. Blessed be the Lord, who hadn't given us as a prey to their teeth. Our soul is escaped as a bird out of the snare of the fowlers. The snare is broken, and we are escaped. Our help is in the name of the Lord, who made heaven and earth. We can say that in verse 1, there are with many commentators a traffic jam. That's because most of the commentators don't want to describe this whole psalm as the literal deliverance of Israel from a literal flood and from being literally eaten and swallowed. See Isaiah chapter 6 verse 13, Revelation chapter 6 verses 9 to 11, and Psalm chapter 35 verse 25, chapter 44 verse 22, and Revelation chapter 20 verse 4, chapter 12 verse 15, Daniel chapter 9 verse 26, and Jeremiah chapter 51 verse 34. This psalm gives the clearest description of the restoration of Israel in the entire Psalter. The Jews are talking in verse 1 and 2 from the standpoint of someone who realizes that an if determined their fate, and that if it hadn't been the Lord. The Lord is prejudiced. He takes sides. He takes the side of Shem, Genesis chapter 9 verse 26, in a showdown, and the other races turn out to be so-called inferior. Some people have weird way of thinking that when someone wins a war, they think it was because God was on their side, so-called. As we know, there have been many kind of wars, and there will be, unfortunately. But there are still always enough people who want to say that those who win the war, they are on the God's side, or God is on their side. And that's the call during the past history, when many European, American wars have been. God is on our side, and we will win the war. God will win the war for us. Sometimes that side which has lost something has still won something else, if not the whole war. And sometimes that side who has won the war has won something, but not maybe many right things. One thing is very interesting to see about different kind of wars in Europe and elsewhere, America, so on, that how the Catholic Pope always comes out on the winning side. No matter how many times he changes sides while a war is going on. Getting back to Israel, those wars in Old Testament we can see clearly when God was on Israel's side and when he wasn't. When someone else won, and usually because as a punishment of God. Now may Israel say, and not before now, because now is when Jesus Christ has returned to sit down on the throne of David. By the way, what comes to italics in the AV, Authorized Version, we can say that they are as inspired as the whole text and everything in King James Bible overall. For example, it's interesting to see the words in italics in the AV all appear in regular print in the Masoretic Society's Hebrew Bible in English. How is it that the AV italics line up with the Masoretic Hebrew? You will find out at the judgment. But understandable way is now to just understand they are there and guided by Holy Ghost. Verse 4, the waters, where waters, Revelation chapter 12 verse 15, as in waters spelled W-A-T-E-R-S. The snare, verse 7, is the snare of Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 12, and the fowlers, verse 7, are the servants of the fowler. See Psalm chapter 91, verse 3. The Jews have been saved from accepting the idol shepherd, Zechariah chapter 11, verse 17. From Christ said they would receive, John chapter 5, verse 43. These have rejected the false Messiah and leave to receive the one, but only with God's divine intervention, if it hadn't been the Lord. From a devotional standpoint, verse 8 teaches us two great truths. The electromagnetic force field of the universe made nothing. Our help is not in science, man, philosophy, the church, the sacraments, religion, psychiatry, the UN, or education. Our help is in one name, verse 8, the name above every name, Philippians chapter 2, verse 9. Not only in this world, but also in that which is to come, Ephesians chapter 1, verse 21. The word to come, Hebrews chapter 2, verse 5, is the millennium. All of the commentators lost the doctrinal reference again. When they carved the millennium out of verse 1, they lost Jesus Christ out of verse 8, in every way except the spiritual sense of prayer. There is no soul in the New International Version, verses 5 and 7, nor in the Revised Standard Version, New Revised Standard Version, or the Living Bible.